Why are dungeons called dungeons in Zelda? It's an interesting question because very few of the places that you visit in Zelda are actually dungeons. A dungeon is where you put prisoners, right, in a castle and you chain them up and forget about them, throw them into an oubliette or whatnot. The dungeons in Zelda and other similar games like Zelda are very, very rarely dungeons. I started thinking about this question because on Fab at the moment the free asset pack is called Dungeon, but it's clearly not a dungeon, it's more like a crypt. And indeed in Zelda, where you're going is more like temples or shrines or castles. In this game, the 6 temples that we're visiting are actually called temples. You've got the Forest Temple, the Water Temple, etc. But collectively, they're still called dungeons. And there is actually a thread on the retro gaming subreddit that may have the answer to this. So it turns out in the original Japanese version of the game, the collective noun that's used for these areas is meikyu. Now meikyu, depending on whether you're using the Japanese or the Chinese translation, is like labyrinth or maze. But according to Redditor Ellipsis Break, it can also refer to dungeon. But that's really interesting because think about the origin of the word labyrinth. Whilst we think of a labyrinth as being a lot closer to a maze in the modern day, in the past the labyrinth was more like a dungeon, right? It's where King Minos threw people that he didn't like into to get eaten by a minotaur. So in a way you've got this brilliant thread of etymology where dungeon and labyrinth are kind of meaning the same thing in that the labyrinth was the dungeon of King Minos. And you have this word in Japanese, meikyu, which can translate both to labyrinth or maze or dungeon. And then in the Zelda games, you now have these being referred to commonly as dungeons, even though labyrinth or maze might be a more appropriate common expression for them. And I think that's really interesting.